Well, water quality, first of all, is defined as the ability of a body of water to support its designated uses. So when you talk about water quality, you have to define, is it for drinking water purposes? Is it for body contact like swimming? Is it for shellfishing in the case of marine waters? Is it simply for enjoyment of aquatic life? Those are actually the bases for different water quality standards. I teach here. I teach a limnology course in the fall. That's the study of freshwater systems. And I'm currently teaching biological oceanography at the graduate level here in Friday Hall, and this is my lab. I learned about Gen X a little bit before the public knew about it, and that's because I read the paper that was published that laid out what was happening. The Cape Fear River Valley in general was viewed by the state and by industry as the logical place for the polluting industries, the chemical manufacturers and so forth, because the idea was that the river drains directly to the ocean and would carry those pollutants out to sea. It's the old dilution is the solution to pollution mantra. If you ask, how do you feel overall about Gen X and this whole story? Most of us, I think, are quite rightly upset and not happy about it at all. Never mind that the numbers have come down, never mind that certain actions have been taken or at least promised. The bottom line is that we were exposed to this stuff for decades. According to the company itself, their own people said, oh yeah, we've been putting that in the water for 37 years. No one should be happy about that, regardless of what's being done going forward. How did that happen? And when you look into that story, and I've done this with some colleagues, we've looked into the permitting and the monitoring and so forth, and what you find out is that the regulatory system we had in place, administered by the state, failed to stop this from happening. The company bears a great deal of responsibility. This is DuPont back when, and became Chemours in 2015. The companies bear a great deal of responsibility. They shouldn't have done this. They failed to disclose what they were doing in their permit applications. The state failed to ask the appropriate questions, never pressed for answers to some very obvious questions, never bothered with them. And even during the midst of the initial crisis in 2017, I've got to tell you from my personal point of view, and I'll try not to get into names of people at DEQ, I was disgusted at the response that they were putting out initially. The first couple of months while this story percolated, there were some pretty sorry excuses made about why this or why that or why not this and why not that. And I thought, you know, you're regulators, you're supposed to regulate. You failed, and you are continuing to fail to do your job. Why? What's wrong here? I know that Detlef Kanapi communicated his findings to the number 2 guy at the Department of Environmental Quality in November of 2016 when his paper was first published. And there was no response to that. So the authorities knew that we had a drinking water quality problem. They did nothing, and they didn't act until the public was outraged by it. Well, there are several reasons to be concerned. One is that it appears that we're going to have to pay for much more sophisticated treatment systems out of our pockets for the time being. I know that the Sweeney Water Treatment Plant is about to install granular activated charcoal filters for getting Gen X and other things out of the water. This is not something that we, the victims, should pay for. The company put that stuff in the water. They shouldn't have. Let them pay for fixing things. They're already on the hook for paying for upgrades in their treatment works at their own factory site. They should pay for everything else that needs to be fixed as well. The fact that we have alternatives to clean up the water is a good thing. That's positive. It's going to take a little while yet. The fact that the discharges have been at least knocked way back so we're looking at much lower levels, is good. There are several things that are concerning. One is that, again, we have been exposed to this stuff for decades without knowing it. So we've been used as guinea pigs. Hundreds of thousands of us have been exposed to a cocktail of compounds that we knew nothing about, never gave permission to have that in our drinking water supply. And so we don't know how our health has been affected. We don't know the full range of possible things to look for. And that's a very uncomfortable place to be. We now have a better handle on what's out there, but it's not perfect. We still don't know what other things could be lurking that we just haven't looked for. Cape Fear River drains a big portion of the state, and there's something like 1,500 permitted discharges into the Cape Fear River, some of them industrial, some of them municipal, a lot of them are small outfits and so on. What are they all putting in the water, and how do we know? If they're like Chemours and DuPont and they aren't telling us what's really in their discharge, how are we supposed to know? The analytical methods for detecting unknown compounds are out there, but they're difficult, they're expensive, and they take a long time to apply. So this is a tough problem to solve. We really don't know what other things that we haven't looked for might actually be there. All the dischargers, the regulators, the water treatment companies and utility authorities and so on, they've all got to do their job really well in order to protect the public from anything that might go wrong with their drinking water. The government acts as a steward for public resources like the Cape Fear River. It's the government's job to protect that resource for us because we're the owners, not somebody else. Chemours doesn't own it, DEQ doesn't own it, we do.